A gute Woche und a freilichen Chanukah, everyone. The Rebbe Zalgazunsan began the Farbrengen this afternoon that this Shabbos is Shabbos Chanukah. And when we say Shabbos Chanukah, we immediately have a combination of two separate inyonim. Shabbos is something which is set up min ha-Torah, it's mideoraisa. However, Chanukah is a yontiv which is midarabana. And we know that there are pluses, there are advantages in inyonim which are mideoraisa, as opposed to an inyan which is midarabana. And on the other hand, we know the Gemara tells us the expression arevim alai, how pleasant it is, divrei seifrim, which is considered divrei seifrim, words of the scribes, which we mean in yonim which were added on midarabana, things which are not min ha-Torah. Even though, the Rebbe continued, that it is explained in Pirkei the Rabbi Elazar, it is explained that when the Rebbe gave Yidden the Torah, he also gave Yidden many of the inyonim which are mit divrei seifrim, including Chanukah and Purim. So we see that Chanukah and Purim was already included to a certain degree when the Rebbe gave Yidden the Torah. Though again regarding Purim, we find that in Gemara there's a whole discussion how Esther requested that Purim should be set up for a yontif, should be arranged for a yontif, should be instituted as a yontif, and the Chachamim debated it, whether it should or until they finally agreed. So we see that it was a question regarding the yontif of Purim. It was in doubt. Because if not for Esther intervening and not the Chachamim the Sanhedrin at that time finally agreeing to her request, then Purim wouldn't have been a yontif. So here the Rebbe explains this is how it was set up originally in Torah, that instituting Purim as a yontif should have to go through a shaklavatariya. In other words, should have to go through a system of a debate until ultimately it will be approved that Purim should be a yontif. But again, Purim and Chanukah are Yomim Tovim which are midarabana. They are not min ha-Torah. It's not specifically mentioned in the Torah. It is something which the Chachamim have introduced in later years when it happened, each one of them, Sai Chanukah and Sai Purim. But at the same time, we know that the Pirkei Rabbi Elazar tells us that when the Rebbe gave Yidden the Torah, it was right away included in Torah already. But at the same time, in actuality, they are considered Yomim Tovim which are midarabon, as opposed to Shabbos or as opposed to other Yomim Tovim which are min ha-Torah. If we want to explain what is the inyan of Chanukah, the Rebbe continues, we don't have to go far. Why? Let us take the taich of the word Chanukah. As the Alter Rebbe writes in Shara Yichud V'Amunah, that the name of something, this is its life, and that is its chayis. Memela, when we're talking about Chanukah, this is the name of this yontif. So if we want to discuss the yontif, let us look into a deeper understanding in the name of the yontif, and we will have the message of the yontif. What is the taich of Chanukah? So as it's brought in Svarim, and it's explained a lot in Chasidus, Chanukah stemming from the word chinuch, meaning education. What shaykhs does it have to Chanukah? Because the Beis HaMikdash, the menorah, was mechunach, was dedicated again once we had the miracle of Chanukah. Until then, the Yidden weren't able to light the menorah, but when they found the pach shem and when they found this little jar of oil, which was pure oil, that is when they dedicated again the menorah. So, dedicating the menorah is called Chanukas HaMenorah. As far as we are concerned, the same word also means chinuch, which means education. So what is the whole inyan of Chanukah? Chanukah is a yontif, when we are supposed to evaluate properly the whole situation of chinuch, the whole ma'amad matzav of chinuch. In fact, we know there's a famous pasuk by Shlomo HaMelech, Chanoich lanar al pi darkoi, bring up a child on his way, and bring up a child in such a way that gam ki yaskin, even when he will age, lo yasur mimeno, he will not part from the education which you have instilled into him when he was young. Rabbi mentioned that interesting. There are mamorim from the Rabbeim, which was said on Chanukah, and these mamorim begin with the pasuk of Chanoich Lana. In general, the beginning of a maimer is usually with a pasuk or with a quotation from Chazal that has a shaykhus to the specific day when the maimer is said, whether it is a pasuk from that sedre, or if it's a yontif, it may be a pasuk or a quotation of Chazal regarding the yontif. Here we have mamorim which was said on Chanukah, and the beginning of the maimer is with the pasuk Chanoich Lanar al pi darkoi. What does this mean? It means that the inyan of chinuch, the inyan of education, has a very obvious shaykhus to Chanukah. And that is why, to such an extent, that the mamorim which the Rabbeim said on Chanukah will also many times began with the pasuk of Chanoich Lana. And talking on the inyan of chinuch, so very strongly how we have to see to it, to give to a child, when we're talking about chinuch, give him a tremendous amount of koiches, a tremendous amount of strength. Give him that much power, put that much into him, so that when he grows up, the child will be able on his own to carry through what was instilled in him when the child was still a youngster. Here the Rebbe came to another inyan. Rebbe said it is brought in Svarim that the attitude of parents to a child should be that parents should not lie to a child. B'chlal, we're not allowed to say a lie. Midvar sheker tircha. B'chlal, no inyan to lie. Especially when we're talking to children. To be careful not to lie to children. Rabbi said that we know that there is a custom that when a child starts going into cheder, we usually take the father or the malamed, whoever is present, takes candies, and we throw the candies at the child, and we tell the child that these candies come from Malach Michal. Malach Michal is throwing these candies at him. So we know how careful we're supposed to be not to lie to a child. So how do we make it a practice that when we throw candies at a child is beginning cheder, we tell him the child should know that who are these candies coming from? These candies are coming from Malach Michal. How does this agree to the fact that how careful we have to be not to lie to a child? So this the Rebbe explained that the truth is that these candies are coming from Malach Michal. These are sweets which Malach Michal wants to give to every child. Child begins going into cheder, this is what Malach Michal is throwing at him. The only thing, it is channeled through the father or through the other people that are present that are throwing it on the child. But really, who is it really coming from? It's coming from Malach Michal. Back to Chanukah. Reb is also bringing out how from Chanukah we have another lesson, that each and every day we go higher and higher. In other words, how great a person may consider himself that he is. And he may be great, and may be serving the Rebishter at a very, very high level. What does the Yontif of Chanukah teach us? Mailim b'kodesh. No matter how great we did the mitzvah tonight, and we did fulfill the mitzvah properly. By tonight, for example, we lit tonight 5 candles. This is the way how we are supposed to light tonight the menorah. Comes tomorrow, if we want to fulfill the mitzvah properly, comes tomorrow, we know we have to add on a candle. What is this? As the Gemara uses the expression, Mailim b'kodesh. How great a Yid is, and how outstanding a person is, there is always room for him to keep on going higher and higher. Mailim b'kodesh. We always have to go in Kedusha high. The other Rebbe referred to another inyan, which the Rebbe has been mentioning several times recently, and this is regarding to the lighting of the menorah, that the lighting of the menorah should be also not only by the father, by the head of the household, but that children should also light the menorah. Children, when the Rebbe spoke about it several times already, the Rebbe spoke about it Yutas Kislev. Also this past Monday night, when the Rebbe spoke to Yechidus, to the Orchim, the Rebbe also spoke about the fact that boys and girls, children, should light the Chanukah menorah. And this in itself is an inyan of Persumei Nisa, publicizing the Nes, and especially by involving children into it. So the children are also becoming part of the celebrating of Chanukah, which leaves a very strong impact on the child. Interesting, when he spoke about it Monday night, the way it sounded from the Rebbe, was not necessarily that every child in the family has to light the candles, has to light the Chanukah licht. It's the way the Rebbe put it Monday night, it is up to the parents to decide, to choose which children should light and who should light every night and so forth. But the main thing is that the children should also be participating, and boys as well as girls should participate in the lighting of the Chanukah candles at home. In other words, they should also light Chanukah. Today the Rebbe referred to it again. And referring to it today, he said regarding the special inyan of this year, that being that this year is a special year, it's a year of Hakel, it's a year of Tismach, and Tesamach. In other words, we should be happy ourselves as well as bringing happiness to others. Mamela, this year is a special year, and based on that, he suggested, the Rebbe says, it was his idea that children, boys as well as girls, should also light the Chanukah. Rebbe said that he got many inquiries, letters, details on this, regarding this new inyan. One of the questions, the Rebbe says, which he got was, how is it about lighting Chanukah licht in the bedroom? The door of the bedroom. Obviously, it's understood the way the Rebbe spoke. The question is regarding for children, if they could light the Chanukah licht on the door of their bedroom. The Rebbe explained today, Chanukah, what's the bedroom? A bedroom is made to sleep, schlafen. Chanukah and schlafen don't go hand in hand. The whole inyan of Chanukah is not to sleep. What's the whole inyan of Chanukah? We should be busy with the Chanukah message. There are many inyanim which we take from Chanukah. The inyanim which we just discussed, how we constantly keep on going higher and higher, the inyan of Mailam B'Kodesh. Then we know that there's a message of Chinuch and Chanukah, which we just discussed. How Chanukah gives us strength as far as education. Then we know that Chanukah has the inyan, the message that we light the Chanukah licht, al Pesach Beisai mi bachutz. We have to light the Chanukah licht by the door, towards the outside. So we know what Chassidus teaches us, that the message in this part of Chanukah is that the whole idea of Chanukah is that we have to bring light into the darkness which is going on outside. Outside it is dark. It's already, as the Gemara says, when the Gemara uses the expression, when are we allowed to light the Chanukah licht? So the Gemara uses the expression mishetishka hachama, from when the sun sets. From sunset. And the Gemara goes on, ad, until when could we light Chanukah licht? Ad de tichla rigla de Talmudoi, until the people that are called Talmudoi. Now Talmudoi, as the Gemara explains, is a tribe of people. These people would walk the streets very late. So as long as they would be walking the streets, means there's still action in the street, there's still people walking in the street. So until that time, we're allowed to light the Chanukah licht. So there's so much in the message of Chanukah. How can we say that Chanukah we are sleeping? Schlafen, sleeping, and Chanukah does not go hand in hand. Mele, when we're talking about Shabbos licht, there's the whole idea of Shabbos licht is, why do we light Shabbos candles? Shabbos candles we light, one of the reasons which is given in Gemara and in Halacha, so that it should be light in the room. Memela, shalo yikoshel be'etz ube'even, so that the people that are in the rooms should not trip over something which is a piece of wood, a piece of lumber, or a piece of stone, or a stone which is in the room. And if it's dark, we can't see. So that is why we have Shabbos licht. So Memela, Shabbos licht in a bedroom, we can still understand, because the same idea of shalo yikoshel be'etz ube'even, not to trip over something, this goes on in every room of the house. However, when we're talking about Chanukah, wie kommt Schlafen zu Chanukah? So one is going to ask, we know that the Gemara tells us, Gemara says that if a person says that he's accepting upon himself that he will not sleep for 3 nights, so the Gemara says we give him malchus and we make sure that such type of an oath, which a neder or a shvua, which a person accepts upon himself, has no value. Why? Because a person, because of his health, must sleep. So if a person would say that during 3 days he's accepting upon himself 3 days not to sleep, this is it's not a logical statement. It's contradictory to his health. A person cannot hold this out, and therefore Torah does not allow a person to make such a neder. Here we're talking about a week of Chanukah. The Rebbe says the person, his body, and his mind could be sleeping. Person has to sleep for our health, which we have to go to sleep every night. It's we have to. But still, the inyan of Chanukah that's in him, this is takanat sleep. Rabbi brought an example to it. We have the Gemara. The Gemara tells us, Adam mu'ed lo'olam. A man is always responsible for his actions. Bein oyer, bein yoshan. Whether he's awake or he's sleeping. What do we derive from this? That even when a person sleeps, he's responsible for what he's doing. So if a person is responsible for what he's doing when he sleeps, the same thing when we're talking about Chanukah, he is physically sleeping. But the inyan of Chanukah that's within him, Chanukah's penetrated so much into him, so the Mazei feel durchgenommen, it became so much part of him, that this inyan of Chanukah in the person, this is never sleeping during Chanukah. And the Rebbe is concluding to say that a bedroom, which is a room which is made up directly for sleeping, should have a shaykhis to the inyan of lighting Chanukah lich. These are two contradictory inyanim. It seems, and I spoke it over with a few other people, it seems that the Rebbe is referring to a room which is used only for sleeping and nothing else is going on in that room. We're talking about a children's room where a child sleeps there, but a child plays in that room as well, and this is the child's Beis Chabad. This is the Cheder Tzivis Hashem of a child. But naturally, other things are done in that room as well, and it seems that this is not what the Rebbe is referring to, where he's excluding a bedroom from tzinding Chanukah licht at the doors of a bedroom. Obviously, he's only referring to a room which is used exclusively for sleeping and for no other reason whatsoever. I'm not taking this on my own, but this evening we spoke it over with a few other Yidden, and it seems that this is what the Rebbe meant. Getting back to what Chanukah is all about, we just mentioned the Gemara, where the Gemara says that the mitzvah of Chanukah is mishetishka hachama, when the sun sets. In other words, what's the inyan of sunset? The inyan of sunset, that's darkness. And what is the whole inyan of Chanukah? To bring lichtigkeit into that darkness. Until when could we light Chanukah licht? So Gemara uses the expression, as we just mentioned, as long as these Talmudoi are still in the streets. So in Chassidus it's explained, and the Rebbe referred to it today at length, Talmud has the same letters as a moired. What does moired mean in Hebrew? One who rebels. A person who rebels is called a moired. The letters of moired, mem vav reish dalet, are in the word Talmud. Rebbe explained who these Talmuds were. These were a tribe of people who the Gemara says they would walk the streets late at night. But it seems like they were descendants of slaves of Shlomo HaMelech. Which means, originally, they had a shaykhus to Shlomo HaMelech. And Shlomo HaMelech, Shlomo Shmoi, his name was Shlomo, V'shalom haya b'yomav, and in his days was peace. In other words, his days, whenever we want to refer to a generation of a very high madrega, we refer to the generation of Shlomo HaMelech. And here we say that an outcome of people who were his slaves, in other words, what winded up being of them? They became Talmudoi. And what is Talmudoi? Talmudoi has the same letters as Moired, as one who rebels. What do we say is the inyan of Chanukah? The inyan of Chanukah is to bring the lichtigkeit to such an extent Adikalya rigla de Talmudoi, until the footsteps of the Talmudoi who are walking in the street will no longer be there. In other words, the whole idea of Chanukah is to reach out and bring Lichtigkeit. The Neir of Chanukah. What is the Neir of Chanukah? That's the Neir mitzvah of the Torah, what the Licht of Chanukah stands for. To bring this Lichtigkeit, it should be so effective that even the one who until now was in a category of a moired, in other words, he was in a category of a person who's rebelling against the Rebishter, to make his footsteps disappear. In other words, that there shouldn't be anyone left that can be described as a moired. And on the contrary, even to such people, to reach them with the Lichtigkeit of Chanukah, to reach them with the warmth and the message of Chanukah, and bring the whole message of Chanukah even to such people, and what will happen as a result will be that it will be Kalya, Rigla, the Talmudoi, as the Gemara says, the footsteps of these Talmudois, who in other words, the Moired, the one who's rebelling, in the Rebishter, their footsteps will disappear, they will no longer be in existence. Then the Rebbe continued regarding Shabbos. The whole union of Shabbos is menucha, rest. This is what Shabbos is about. Though we know, as there's a pasuk, Adam la'amal yivale, man was created for toil, for hard work. And then regarding this pasuk, there's a Gemara. The Gemara says, I don't know what is considered toil. Is it the toil of hard work, amal melacha, or is it the toil, the hard work, the labor of a person haraving in Torah? The Gemara discusses all the various categories of toil which a person can be involved in. Amal Torah, amal sicha, amal melacha. However, when we're talking about Shabbos, Shabbos is in Yom Menucha. So, on one hand, Shabbos and Omal and toil are two contradictory concepts. Shabbos is an union of rest, and we say that the rest of the week is what? An union of Omal, an union of Haravanya, Yigiya, hard work, toil. So, this the Rebbe says could be explained because in order, it's not the time we are resting. This rest is also part of the Avodah, part of the Omal. Because in order that a person should be able to put hard work into something, for the Amal Torah, for the Amal Malacha, what is needed during the week, when can one be successful in the Omal, in the toil? That is when he has a proper rest. And after putting in again a certain amount of strength, this again requires a rest. So in other words, the rest which we have on Shabbos is not the pshat we are just relaxing and it has no shaykhs to the avodah which we're doing during the week. On the contrary, it is the rest of Shabbos that gives us koyach to fulfill the avodah during the week. But now that we are talking on a level of Shabbos Chanukah, Rabbi brought in a comparison. We know that every day in the Beis HaMikdash there was a korban tamid which was brought every day. This korban was a constant, we call it tamid, constant. Why? Because it was brought constantly every day of the year. The morning and in the evening. We know there's a tamid shel shacha and there's a tamid shel bein ha'arbayim, the same korban tamid which was brought in the evening as well. Which kohen is supposed to do this avodah with the korban tamid? Any kohen can be makriv the korban tamid. Now the question arises, comes Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur, the entire avodah of Yom Kippur is done by whom? Is done by the Kohen Gadol. So the Gemara says, the fact that it is Yom Kippur, ahane, helped also for the korban tamid, which normally every day in the year a regular kohen could do the avodah. But being that today's avodah, the whole avodah of all other korbanos, is with a kohen gadol, so the korban tamid today also today meaning Yom Kippur also has to be handled by the kohen gadol. In other words, we say that even though this is a kolb which we bring every day of the year, but being that this day is a special day, so the specialty of the day affected the routine kolbonos as well. The same. Being that this is a special Shabbos, it is a Shabbos of Shabbos Chanukah. So Memele, Rabbi says, Ahani, it helped that the Avodah of Shabbos, it picks up that the entire Shabbos becomes a different Shabbos. And therefore the Rebbe says there are two levels, already in a deeper stage, that there are two levels of a Yid serving the Rebishter. There's a Yid serving the Rebishter, where it is felt that he is a person, he feels himself, and he is the one who is fulfilling the Rebishter's mitzvahs. There is a yet higher level. The yet higher level is, as the Chassidish expression would go, a Yid who is in a level of bittul b'metzias. Bittul b'metzias means he is totally, his own existence is totally not there. He does not feel himself in any way. And therefore, when it's a question of doing mitzvahs of the Rebishter, he does all the mitzvahs of the Rebishter. But there is nothing which we cannot use a description that and use it, like we say. We just discussed earlier that there's a concept of amal melacha, amal Torah, which means a concept of toil. In other words, he has worked hard, he has labored hard, and therefore he is tired as a result of that. When could we say that a person puts in hard work, and after the hard work he needs a menucha? And once he has the menucha, once he has the rest, he can again do hard work. All of this is when the person feels himself. However, when a person comes up to a level, which we would call to a level of bittul b'metzias, in other words, he does not feel his existence whatsoever. All he is there for is to serve the Rebishter. When he is at such a madrege, that all he is there for is to do the Rebishter's mitzvahs. In other words, it's mitzvah, as we find many times the expression, Rabbeinu Shalom, it's your mitzvahs. The person is feeling, what he's doing, all that he's doing is the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He does not feel himself in any way whatsoever. When a person is up to such a madrege, then this is a higher madrege than what we have just discussed, that there's an inyan of rest, and this rest gives strength and comes a preparation to the toil of the week, and so forth. Here we are talking on a yet higher level. Here we are talking on a level where the person does not feel any tiredness whatsoever. He does not feel that he's tired. He does not feel that he's putting in hard labor as well, that he's becoming exhausted from what he's doing. Why? Because he's at a level of what? At the level of bittul b'metzias. He totally does not feel his existence whatsoever. And this is the Avodah of Shabbos Chanukah. Later the Rebbe continued in the Farbrengen, referring to Rashi's in this week's Sedre. In the Sedre, the Rebbe explained 3 different psukim which require an interpretation. And also the Rebbe mentioned that this year it has been the custom to talk every day, that the Rebbe spoke every day after the lighting of the Hanukkah candles. And this is also part of Pirsumei Nisa. It is also done to publicize the Nes. The Rebbe said, being that we know that Mefakchen al Tzorchei Tzilur b'Shabbos, it comes Shabbos, we're allowed to take care of public matters, even though it does not have a shaychus to Shabbos, even though it's regarding after Shabbos. Rabbi brought that there was a certain Tana, the name is not on my mind, that the tefillos, special tefillah, which normally would be recited on Motzei Shabbos, it's a Gemara. This Tana or Amayra would recite this tefillah on Shabbos. In other words, Shabbos afternoon he would already recite this tefillah. What does this show? That between Shabbos and Shabbos night there's a very close shaychus, there's a very close relationship. So regarding tonight, the Rebbe says he will not speak, and that is because it involves a question in halacha. Though Havdalah is made in shul, that's a custom to make Havdalah in shul, nonetheless there are many people that don't do certain malachas until they come home and make Havdalah themselves. especially regarding malachis de'araisa, malacha which is min ha'torah. That means even though we have daven ma'ariv already, there are some that have this minhag, this chumrah upon themselves. In other words, they are so cautious that until they will not make havdalah themselves, they will not do various malachas. And Mamela the Rebbe says, if he will speak, it may bring to the impression that this inyan does not exist, and being that there may be some people that feels it this way, or perhaps the person, the speaker, in other words, referring to himself, he also feels it that way, not to do certain malachas until they make havdalah. Therefore, he will not speak tonight, and rather the inyan which he wanted to speak tonight, rather this inyan he will discuss in the Farbrengen of the afternoon. It seems, again, that the Rebbe could have spoken Motzei Shabbos, but he could have spoken without a microphone. We know that when the Rebbe speaks, during Sukkot, the Rebbe speaks every day, every evening. And when he speaks Motzei Yontif, in other words, after the first days of Sukkot, the Rebbe also does not speak with a microphone in front of him. Again, obviously, it's because he has not made Havdalah yet. He heard Havdalah in Shul, and Shul Havdalah is being made, a similar situation like today. But it seems like today it's yet more. It's not just the speaking. Speaking could have spoken without a microphone tonight as well. But it is not only the speaking, it is the giving out of the dollars. And probably the Rebbe didn't, again, seems so, that the Rebbe did not want to handle the giving out of dollars for tzedakah before he made Havdalah. The way the Rebbe has been talking these couple of days, when the Rebbe speaks after lighting of the Chanukah licht, the contents of the Rebbe's Sicha is usually based on the Kriya, the reading of the Torah, which is read on that day of Chanukah. Especially tonight, it is the 5th lichtel of Chanukah, and we know that the Rabbeim, the Sichas, make a very big issue of the 5th lichtel of Chanukah. The reading in the Torah, which is read tomorrow, is Nasi Libnei Shimon. The reading of the tribe of Shimon. Yes, by Yom HaChamishi, on the 5th day, Nasi Libnei Shimon. However, today we read by Yom HaRevi, the 4th day, it is Nasi Libnei Reuven, the Nasi for the Bnei Reuven. I've explained what is the inyan of the Bnei Reuven and what is the inyan of Bnei Shimon. I spoke about it very briefly, but basically Reuven stems from the word Re'iyah, vision, see, to see something. However, Shimon is based on Shoma, hearing. This is what we find in the Torah. When Leah gave the names to the children that were born, regarding Reuven, she said, Ra lekim ba'oni. Rebishta saw her problem and he blessed her with a child. Then regarding Shimon, the expression goes Shoma, the Rebishta heard. But it's explaining that the way it's explained in Chassidus, Re'iyah, vision, is a higher madrega than the madrega of Shmiyah, of hearing. So what do we talk? We're stressing here how this inyan of the day of Chanukah, the 5th day of Chanukah, has a shaykhus to every Yid. Even those Yidden who are not in the level of Re'iyah. They are only in the level of Shmiyah, which is a lower madrege. Still the inyan of Chanukah and the message of Chanukah, and what all that we discussed before regarding the inyanim of Chanukah, has a shaykhus even to those Yidden who are on the level of Shmiyah. That is the inyan of Nasi Livnei Shimon. The Rebbe concluded with tremendous brachas that every Yid should have whatever he needs, and every Yid should be in the position of a Nasi, which is a prince, and every Yid is really in such a position. Every Yid is considered like a king and sons of kings and so forth. And Mamela gave a tremendous bracha to each and every Yid. Even those Yidden who are not in the Madrega of Reuven, they're in the Madrega of Shimon, which is the inyan of Shmiyah, hearing, which is a lower Madrega than Reuven. Still, to them also this inyan has a shaykhus. Regarding the psukim which the Rebbe discussed in the Sedra, first there is an inyan at the beginning of the Sedra. This is something which the Rebbe discussed, that is in the dreams of Paroi. In Pasuk Hey, right at the beginning of the Sedra, we find but the cows, vatechalna haporo, Yisrois hamara v'dakes habasa, the not-looking one, the bad-looking ones, and the skinny ones, ate up as sheva haporis hayofis, the good ones, and hamare v'habriyos, and the healthy ones, and vayikatz pari, and pari woke up. This was the first dream that he had. So as far as the word briyos, Rashi teaches it with a belaz. A belaz means it is not a word in Hebrew, it is a word in French. Rashi regularly wrote his Pirush in Hebrew. But where Rashi felt that the child who is learning his Pirush is understanding the Hebrew words that Rashi used. However, where Rashi came across a Hebrew word, which he figured the child will not understand, that is when Rashi brought in words from Loshen Amzor, from the country which was spoken where Rashi lived in, and that was in France. If we were to go to come further, we find again Vativlana Ashibalim. Here we're talking about the wheat. Vativlana Ashibalim Adakos. Also the thin sticks swallowed the healthy sticks, the fatter ones, and Pari woke up, and this was a secondary. If we were to look in here on Pasuk Zayin again, we will notice Rashi is quoting the same word here, Habriyos, and is also giving us the French interpretation, which is very strange, because just 2 psukim ago we had the word Habriyos, and Rashi explained us in French what it means. So why 2 psukim later is Rashi quoting the same word, Habriyos, Briyos, quoting the same word, and giving us the same French interpretation, just 2 psukim apart? Furthermore, if we were to look into the Sedre, we will notice that the word Briyos is really mentioned in Pasuk Beis right away. And Rashi does not comment on Pasuk Beis. On Pasuk Beis, Rashi does not comment. Briyos basa. Why doesn't Rashi tell us there that Briyos means whatever the word means, which means a healthy animal, a healthy cows? Why doesn't Rashi tell us right on Pasuk Beis what does Briyos mean? Rabbi says this kasha is brought in Svarim to say that the person who, in other words, as they would call him the Bachar Hazetza. Bachar Hazetza would mean the person that would do the typesetting. That he did things on his own here, and he was the one that repeated it twice, put in French word once, and put in the French word again. It's very hard to say that. Especially that we will assume that Rashi Taka wrote his Pirush in France, but there was typesetting going on Rashi's Pirush not only in France, but in Italy, and in Germany, and in Poland. So really we have to understand there's definitely a reason for it, why it is the same word, and the word is repeated 2 psukim apart, and Rashi brings the same balaz, the same French interpretation on this word. Truth is, if we look into Targum, we notice that the Targum is also teaching these words. The word which the Rebbe said is, first of all, it is not understood why. The reason why Rashi does not touch up Briyos when the word Briyos is mentioned the first time in the Torah, which is in Pasuk Beis, this the Rebbe says is very simple. Why? Because the child who's learning Chumash and he hears a healthy behemoth and a non-healthy behemoth, this is a concept which the child it is familiar to a child. Why is it familiar to a child? A child eats meat, so the child knows that there's a good piece of meat, a healthy piece of meat, and at times could be a spoiled piece of meat. And if it is a spoiled piece of meat, perhaps it may come from an unhealthy behemoth. And that is why it's an undesirable piece of meat. Okay. So Mamela, the first time we are coming across the explanation of Briyos Basa, Briya, healthy, regarding a behemoth, the child will know very well what it means, a healthy behemoth. However, when we are discussing the wheat that's growing, the shibalim, and here we have the expression Briyos v'tevos, healthy wheat. In other words, a healthy piece of bread. This is something which is very strange. A child doesn't know that there's healthy bread, there's no healthy bread. This expression, healthy bread versus non-healthy bread, is a strange expression to the child. Child knows that there's spoiled bread. So using Yiddish, the expression would go verschimmelte Breut, which means bread which is no good, it's rotten, it's spoiled. Or the times that you have different specialty types of bread, which may be sweet or whatever. To have healthy bread and non-healthy bread, this is an expression which is strange to the child who's learning Chumash. So Mamela, as long as the Torah is talking about the behemoths, as long as the Torah is talking about the poros, and using the word bria regarding a para, I can understand the healthy and non-healthy. However, once we are discussing the wheat that's growing, where do we have an union of healthy and unhealthy wheat? So that is why healthy bread, not healthy bread. So that is why when we have the word bria mentioned regarding the wheat, that is when Rashi explains it. The second time when the word bria is mentioned, first of all, it's not brios, it's already ha-brios, with a hey ha-yidiya. But still Rashi is giving the same interpretation. So the Rebbe says the only interpretation which we have is also one which is brought in Svarah. That the second time when Rashi brings the word brios, which is in Pasuk Zayin, the Pasuk says ha-brios, the healthy ones, v'ha-melayos, and the full ones. So the nayis here is, in other words, what Rashi is introducing, even though here it says v'ha-melayos, they are full, the wheat, and the meaning is still the same French meaning, which Rashi is repeating again what he said in Pasuk Hey, and is saying it now again in Pasuk Zayin. Another inyan which the Rebbe discussed is when Yosef, a little bit further, in Pasuk Yud Daled, Vayishlach Pari, when Pari heard about Yosef, so Pari sent for him, Vayikra es Yosef, and he called Yosef, Vayiritzuhu min haboyer. And Yosef was rushed out of prison, Vayigalach, he was given a haircut, Vayichalif sim loisef, and his clothes were changed, Vayove el Pari, and he came to Pari. So on the words Vayigalach, that he was given a haircut, Rashi tells us why was he given the haircut? Mipnei kavod hamalchus, being that he's going to see the king, so he has to be dressed. His hair has to be shaped properly. So he got a haircut. However, the pasuk doesn't stop there. The pasuk also tells us that his clothes were changed. Vayichalif sim loisef. Why doesn't Rashi give a reason why were his clothes changed? To say that the same reason applies to the changing of his clothes, that it was also mepnei kavod hamalchus, then when Rashi brought down the word Vayigalach, Rashi should have said Vayigalach v'goymer, which means him getting the haircut, plus whatever else is discussed in the pasuk. All of this was mepnei kavod hamalchus, but Rashi doesn't do that. Rashi only says Vayigalach. So if Rashi only says the Vayigalach, that was the haircut was mepnei kavod hamalchus. And what's the fact of him changing the clothes?
Didn't you say he's got a shave instead of haircut?
So the Rebbe is learning Pshat in the pasuk. He says it's simple and understood to the child who's learning the pasuk. Vayishlach Pari vayikra es Yosef vayiritzuhu min haboyer. They rushed him out of prison. In other words, they want to rush to get him to Pari as fast as possible. Now the pasuk says Vayigalach. He was given a haircut. What is that for? So the child knows. He knows that when he was 3 years old, he had his upsharanish, and he knows that after that, every now and then, after a while goes by, child knows that he has to get a haircut. So obviously, when Yosef was in Mitzrayim, Yosef in Mitzrayim also got his haircuts, and when Yosef was in prison, he got his haircuts as well. Now that we're learning a pasuk, how Yosef is being rushed to come to the king. Vayiritzuhu min haboyer, they're rushing him to bring him to the king. Why all of a sudden a haircut? Didn't he get haircuts? He was 12 years in prison. He didn't get haircuts while he was in prison? Obviously he got haircuts there too. So what's in the middle of such a rush procedure, the fact of Vayigalach, to give him a haircut now? So that's why Rashi tells us, you want to know why Vayigalach, mipnei kavod hamalchus, that he should look proper and appropriate when he's coming into the Melech. However, regarding Vayichalif sim loisef, the Rashi doesn't have to tell us why this was done. This child who's learning Chumash knows, and he's heard stories, and he knows and he's heard that when a person is in prison, and Yosef here was in prison for 12 years, so Mamela, he's not given proper clothing. especially to change his clothes. So Mamela, there's no question in the child's mind why why Yosef's clothes were changed. Definitely, he was in prison for 12 years. He was wearing, I don't think the Rebbe mentioned the fact that he was wearing prisoner clothes, but he definitely was not given the option of changing clothing as it should be. Therefore, before he had to come to the king, it's self-understood that he had to change his clothes. However, Vayigalach, obviously, his hair will cut from time to time, even when he was in prison as well. So the question arises, why was that done? So Vayigalach, Rashi learns when they cover the Malchus. A third Indian which the Rebbe explained is when Yosef already met with his brothers. Right before Hamishi, Kapitel Mem Beis Pasuk Yud Zayin, and Pasuk tells us that Yosef wanted that he should send one of their brothers back to bring Binyamin. Vayesef Isam El Mishmo Shloishes Yomim. He put him into prison for 3 days. Vayemer Aleim Yosef Vayem Ashlishi. It came the third day. Yosef told them, Zayis Asu, this is what you should do, and he gives them instructions. So the question is, why did he put him into prison for 3 days? What kind of a significance is 3 days in prison? Why 3? Why not 2? Why not 4? Why not less? Why not more? Obviously, every act is done with reason. Why 3 days? Regarding this question, Rabbi brought a Rambam. Rambam tells us regarding the avodah of the karbonis, that the karbonis which were brought in the Beis Hamikdash. So we have many details regarding karbonis. Regarding the karbonis, regarding the pouring the wine on the karbonis, and there were many, many numbers which apply to all of these karbonis. So the Rambam tells us, don't look for explanations regarding all these numbers. Because if you're going to look for explanations regarding all these numbers, why so-and-so, why not more, why not less, it's hard to come to a reason. But on the other hand, regarding here, why Yosef put him into prison for 3 days, not more, not less, Rabbi says this is something which Rashi doesn't have to explain. Why? Because the child who was learning Chumash has already learned it in Rashi. We learned earlier in Chumash Bereishis when Avram took his son Yitzchak to the Akedah. So the pasuk there tells us, Vayoyim Ashlishi, it was on the third day, Vayisa Avram Eseinav, and Avram picked up his eyes, Vayaras Amor Kemerochik, and he saw the place where he was supposed to bring Yitzchak for an Akedah. He saw that place from the distance. So what does Rashi tell us there? Why on the third day? Why did it take by the Rebishter 3 days till he showed him the spot? So the Rebishter says, so Rashi says, that the Rebishter's reason for this was, the Rebishter's calculation was, we shouldn't say that the Rebishter confused Avram Avinu. We told him right away, go, grab him, take him for a kolb, and shecht him, and didn't give him time to digest it, didn't give him time to think about it. So we say that what? It is not so. The Rebishter gave him a chance. The Rebishter gave him 3 days. 3 days is a time that a person could think something over. In other words, when we're talking, what is a reasonable time to really be able to think something over properly, we derive this from Chumash, from where the Rebishter told Avram to bring Yitzchak on the Akedah. We derive it from there that it is 3 days. Memela, we can understand why Yosef here also applied the number of 3 days. He put him into prison for 3 days, and then it came on the third day, Vayemer Aleim Yosef Vayem Ashlishi, on the third day he told them what to do. Why? Because 3 days, this is the proper time to be able to think over something properly. So Yosef, on the other hand, he should be able to come to a proper decision what to tell his brothers after he was looking what to tell them, and he recognized them and they did not recognize him, and he wanted to bring them to a proper tshuva and so forth. That's why he allowed himself a period of 3 days so that he should be able to think this thing over properly. Regarding the Shir and the Rambam, learning of 3 Prokim Rambam a day, we begin the halachas of Sanhedrin, the halachas of judges. which this is based on a pasuk, Shoftim v'shoitrim titen lecha b'chol sha'arecha, that it is a mitzvah that we are supposed to have judges and police, in other words, those who will enforce the decision of the judge at all our gates. Rabbi says this inyan al pi nigla, in other words, the halachic aspect of it he already discussed at previous occasions, and it is already printed. Therefore, we will discuss it today from a spiritual aspect. The Rebbe always keeps on quoting the Rambam. The Rambam says that the whole inyan of mitzvahs is liyasher hadeyos, to straighten out our views, our minds. That's the whole idea of mitzvahs. The Mela regarding this mitzvah of shoftim, the mitzvah of judges, we have to put at all of our gates, there's an interpretation from the Shach, the Pesach, the Shach from Yeredeya. He wrote a Perush, he also wrote a commentary on Chumash. And in his commentary on Chumash, he explains this concept of judges, how it applies to each and every person. Each and every person is considered like a small city, an Ir Ktana, a mini city which every person is. And within this person, just like we are told that at all our gates of our cities we should place judges, the same thing at all the gates of the Ir Ktana, of the small city which is the person, we are also to place judges. And what do we mean by gates? So the Shach explains that they are the openings that are within a person. A person has his eyes, his ears, his mouth. These are also openings in a person. And what are we told? That we are supposed to judge ourselves at each of these gates. In other words, to make sure that we look only where we are supposed to, what we talk is only what we are supposed to, what we listen to is only what we are supposed to. This is the inyan of shoftim v'shoitrim, the inyan of judges, how we are to judge ourselves in Ruchnius. Also, this talking about this inyan of judging, Rabbi says we find in the Rambam tells us that before the coming of Mashiach, rather when Mashiach will come, what will be one of the first things which will happen? V'oshiva sheftayich kivarishayna. The Rebbe says that he will return the judicial system as it was once upon a time. Rabbi says we are so anxious, we're anxiously waiting for Geula. We are waiting for Mashiach to come. We want to get to Beis HaMikdash. What role does it have, the fact that for Yeshiva Shiftayich Kurishayna, why should we detain ourselves at such an important moment with instituting our judicial system as it was in the past? Why can't that come later? Main thing is that we're out of Golus. The main thing is that Mashiach has come. We're no longer in Golus. We are in Geula. What are we told? What's going to be? Rabbi brought a Gemara. The Gemara tells us that where is this going to take place? The inyan of setting up the judicial system when Mashiach will come, that will take place in the city of Tveria. So why do we have to go through a whole inyan of taking Yidden to Tveria? And all this takes time. At the time we are such high moments. It's the moment of the coming of Mashiach. It's the moment of Geula. And here we say, what is the first thing which we are going to be occupied with Shiva Shiftayach Kavarishayna? Rabbi explained what is the inyan of a judge, of inyan of judging, shoftim v'shoitrim. That is the inyan that anything which we have in doubt becomes clarified once there's a psak din on it. We know ein simcha kahatoras hasfekes. There's an expression. There is no joy that can be compared to the fact that when a person has doubts and these doubts are cleared, this is the biggest simcha. In other words, when we are not confused, we know exactly what we are supposed to do, we have no doubts, this is the greatest satisfaction by a person. In order that we should be able to have proper menuchas hanefesh and proper menuchas haguf, proper rest, peace of mind, as far as the soul is concerned, as far as the body is concerned. To be able to have proper menucha, we have to make sure that all our doubts are cleared. And Memela, that is why, when can we have proper simcha and proper serving the Rebishter and absorbing all these tremendous revelations in the proper way, once it will be V'ashiva Shiftayich Kavarishayna. The judicial system will be set up again. Memela, this will lead to it that everything will be clarified and we'll know exactly what we are supposed to do. We will not have any doubts in our mind. Memela, once we will not have any doubts, we will be able to absorb properly all the tremendous Giluyim, all the tremendous revelations which will come together with Giyula. And the Rebbe Taki concluded, let it Taki be so, that Mashiach should come mamish, as he used the expression twice, mamish, we should have the inyan of Giyula. A good tevach and a freilich and Chanukah.